Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
After Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were found murdered on the grounds of their family's massive compound in rural South Carolina, authorities questioned Alec Murdaugh. The husband and father of the deceased spoke with Jeff Croft, an agent with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, also known as SLED. During that interview, Agent Croft said that Alec, who would later be charged with Maggie's and Paul's deaths, became emotional. According to Agent Croft, Alec said something extremely damning during that interview.
On June the 10th, you're in the car with him, and according to your testimony, he says, "I did him so bad."
That is what I understood him to say, yes, sir.
That's right. According to a SLED agent, Alec Murdaugh basically admitted that he was the killer by saying, "I did him so bad." Agent Croft went on to say that Alec cried when this happened, and that he added, "He's such a good boy too," referring to Paul. At trial, Alec's defense attorneys would heavily question this assertion and what happened in its wake.
You just said you took a mental note of it.
Yes, sir, I did.
I mean, if the guy in the middle of the circle, the only one in the circle, says, "I did him so bad," isn't that a significant statement if he actually said that?
It's definitely something we would follow up with.
You never followed up with it, did you?
There was a third interview conducted with Mr. Alex.
In last week's episode, we introduced the trial of Alec Murdaugh. He's the 54-year-old lawyer and member of one of the most prominent legal families in South Carolina, accused of killing his 52-year-old wife, Maggie, and their 22-year-old son, Paul. Paul and Maggie were killed late in the evening on June 7, 2021, at the South Carolina property known as Moselle. The Alec Murdaugh case has been widely discussed in recent months. It's the subject of numerous documentaries on Netflix, HBO, and Oxygen, and it received wall-to-wall coverage on a number of television news outlets. One of those was Law and Crime. Anjanette Levy covered the case for them. And here's how she described the testimony from Agent Croft.
What happened was Senior Special Agent Jeff Croft was interviewing Alec Murdaugh 2 days after the homicides. And they were sitting in a vehicle, and Alec Murdaugh became upset and said, it appeared to me to sound like he said, they did him so bad, or they did him so bad. And Senior Special Agent Croft testified that he heard Alec Murdaugh say, "I did him so bad. I did him so bad." So it was a little bit of a dispute. I heard they when I listened to it the first time, second time when it was slowed down. But then one time when I was in my hotel room, I heard it on television and heard I. It's very odd.
Did Alec say, "I did him so bad"? Or did he say, "They did him so bad"? According to Anjanette, it served as a pivotal moment.
It was something early in the trial that really got you thinking, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Did he slip? Was this a slip of the tongue? Or did he possibly just say something about how badly somebody harmed his wife and child?
During last week's episode, we walked through some of the first days of the trial. Today, we'll get into more testimony and the conclusion. Is Alec Murdaugh guilty of murdering his wife and son? Or was he the victim of a very aggressive and malicious prosecution? This is Jillian, and in partnership with Law and Crime, you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 233, part 2. The South Carolina town where the Murdaugh trial unfolded is about 50 miles northwest of Charleston. Here's Anjanette Levy again.
The city of Walterboro is where the Colleton County Courthouse sits. And the downtown area right there is pretty picturesque. It's beautiful. It's southern, just in the architecture. There are palm trees. It's quite pretty.
The location of Alec's trial became a kind of a mecca for trial watchers.
People were showing up. Some people, once they really realized the trial was underway, they were traveling from other states, showing up at 2 a.m. to ensure they got a spot in line, a spot inside the courthouse. And even the people who didn't get a spot in the courthouse, some of them were waiting all day into the afternoon outside in line, hoping they could get in. This was South Carolina's trial of the century, but in some ways it was also a trial of the century for the country in some respects. It wasn't as big as, say, the OJ trial, but people were watching. Millions of people were watching this each day.
On February 2nd, 2023, jurors and onlookers in the courthouse and around the world on television and the internet heard testimony about 2 cell phone videos recorded by Paul Murdaugh. Paul recorded the first one around 7 p.m. on June 7th, 2021, the night that he and his mother were killed. He recorded the video and posted it to Snapchat. He recorded the second video for one of his best friends, Rogan Gibson, who was texting and calling Paul that night. Paul never sent the second video to his friend, but it played an outsized role in his father's murder trial. It was recorded around 8:45 p.m. near the dog kennels on the property. Here's Sled Lieutenant Britt Dove speaking about that second video.
What do you hear in the video?
You hear 3 different voices in the video. You can tell because they're so different, you can tell that they're different voices.
The jury heard testimony from Lieutenant Dove and other witnesses who said they were all but certain that one of the 3 voices in the video was Paul's father, Alec. In court, this video was known as the kennel video.
The kennel video was really a critical piece of information for this jury. Alec Murdaugh had said on 3 occasions to law enforcement that he had not been at the kennels that night. He had also told his law partners and other people that he hadn't been down there. He had been napping.
And it wasn't just videos putting Alec at the kennels on the night of the murders. Rogan Gibson, Paul's friend, said he and Paul were texting and calling that night because Rogan's dog was in the Moselle kennels. Rogan said he heard Alec in the background of a phone conversation a little before 9 p.m.
When you spoke to Special Agent Croft on June 8th, 2021, did you tell him and Special Agent McAllister who you thought you heard on that phone call at 8:40?
I did.
And who did you say you heard?
I thought it was Mr. Alec, but I wasn't exactly sure.
Did you give him a percentage?
I did.
What'd you say?
99%.
That you heard Mr. Alec on that phone call at 8:40?
That's correct.
Prosecutor Waters asked Rogan if he ever spoke with Alec afterwards about why he might have been at the kennels that night. He also asked if Rogan knew of any reason why Alec would murder his wife and youngest son.
While you were there at the house where the family and friends had gathered, did anyone ever ask you about your last contact with Paul?
There was.
And who asked you?
Grandma.
And that being Miss Brandstutter?
That's correct.
Maggie's mother?
That's correct.
And what did you say?
Told her, that I talked to Paul about the dog and told her that I heard Miss Maggie in the background and I heard a male voice that I thought was Mr. Elliott.
Was he in the room then?
Yes.
Did he stand up and say, no, I wasn't there?
He did.
Did you ever have any conversation with Alec Murdaugh about what happened that night?
No, sir.
Did he ever ask you about whether or not you heard him on that phone that night?
No, sir.
Did he ever tell you what he did that night?
No, sir.
Did you ever ask him what he did that night?
No, sir.
Not a subject you wanted to talk about, was it?
That's correct.
The combination of Alec's voice being heard in the videos and Rogan's testimony confirming that he was seemingly at the kennels opened up questions about what else the jury might discover from cell phone data. The state called 14th Circuit investigator Dylan Hightower to the stand. Hightower scoured Moselle the day after the murders and found Maggie's cell phone on the property. He used the Find My iPhone feature.
You were tracking to where Maggie's phone exactly was.
I was driving and looking down at the phone, making sure I was going in the proper direction.
Approximately how far did you drive?
About a half a mile from the entrance to the barns, the driveway to the barns.
Investigators also downloaded Alec's cell phone data and compared it against records from Verizon. They discovered that Alec had deleted 73 calls from his phone.
Prosecution had said, Alec Murdaugh took his wife's phone, drove over to his mom's house, and on the way to mom's house, he tosses his wife's cell phone out of the SUV. For what reason, we don't know. But the defense said the data from Alec Murdaugh's phone showed clearly that he was just trying to reach his wife and that his phone was never moving at the same time as Maggie's, so the phones couldn't have been together. So they were contending that Alec Murdaugh was not holding his wife's cell phone and then placing calls to call her to establish an alibi.
From there, testimony turned to the firearms used to kill Maggie and Paul. Sled ballistics expert Paul Keur testified that spent shell casings near Maggie's body had identical markings to older casings found on the Moselle property.
Mr. Keur, tell us what you found concerning those items.
Based on my examination, it was determined that items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, and 39 had matching mechanism marks, and it was concluded that those items had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time.
So if I understand it correctly, the items collected right by Maggie had been loaded into, extracted to, and ejected by the same firearm that were identified that items were picked up by the side of the house.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Greer didn't stop there.
It was determined that those items, and to include items 108, 113, 116, 117, and 122, also had those same matching mechanism marks to conclude that they had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm as those at the crime scene around Margaret Murdaugh's body and those several recovered from the home.
So the items collected around Margaret Murdaugh's body matched the items collected outside the house, which matched items that were collected in the field at the shooting range.
Yes, sir. I was able to identify that the cartridge cases recovered items 2 through 7 near the body did have matching mechanism marks with several of the items from the area around the home and those in the shooting field, and several of those in the shooting field, to conclude that some of those had been, that those had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time.
This testimony helped the prosecution fulfill a promise they had made on day one, namely that Alec owned a total of 3 AR-style blackout rifles and that they could be connected to Paul and Maggie's deaths. Prosecutors said that shell casings from a recent Murdaugh family recreational shooting session on the Moselle property matched the weapon that killed Maggie. They also alleged that shotgun shells found on Moselle matched the type of ammunition used to kill Paul. Again, the jury would have to decide if this implicated Alec, or if it amounted to evidence that could work in the defense's favor. Did this bolster the defense's implication that there were potentially 2 shooters? Recall that, earlier in testimony, Alec Murdaugh's defense asked if Paul Murdaugh's friend, Rogan Gibson, knew of any reason why Alec would murder his wife and youngest son. That was a loaded question. It was so loaded, in fact, that Judge Clifton Newman said, with jurors in recess, that it opened the door to reputation or character evidence that the state could raise. Prosecutors took this as an invitation to bring up alleged financial crimes committed by Alec. They asked Paul's other friend, Will Loving, if he knew about a very specific financial impropriety.
Did you know anything about him being confronted on the morning of June 7th, 2021, about $792,000 of missing fees from his law firm?
Objection, Your Honor. Totally improper.
Objection is overruled. Did you know anything about that?
No, I did not.
You know any of the facts of those things that I just asked you about?
No, sir.
When defense attorney Jim Griffin called the financial subject matter totally inappropriate, it introduced a complex legal problem into the case. Should Alec's finances play a role in the case against him for murder?
Well, we learned from his testimony things that had already been suspected, that Alec Murdaugh was taking money from settlements that were meant for his law firm and the clients that he represented and keeping that money for himself. Whether or not he was misrepresenting the amount of money that was to be directed to his firm or just outright taking money from clients, that's what he admitted to. I mean, he admitted to taking money from a paraplegic. He admitted to, using money that was meant for two then children and now adult women who were in a car accident where their mother and brother were killed, using that money with the assistance of a man named Russell Lafitte, who was the conservator for these girls, the Plyler girls, and using their money to loan himself money, then paying other clients back with money stolen from other clients.
Alec's financial crimes were pretty shocking.
It was just kind of this whole web and circle of taking, giving, and it was slowly beginning to come to light at the time of the homicides. So he's admitting to stealing the money, misappropriating it, funneling it into different accounts, and just lying about it. So it was pretty disturbing, and it was in the millions and millions of dollars, and it had gone on since at least 2011.
But why would any of this be relevant in a murder case?
Well, if you ask the prosecution, they say because it was the motive for the murders. That was their claim. The defense said it wasn't irrelevant and that it basically was just going to sully his image to the jury, that this was going to turn into a trial about financial crimes and not homicides. So the defense felt like, this was a totally separate issue and had nothing to do with the murders because they said Alec Murdaugh didn't commit the murders. But the state was required to present evidence to the judge. The judge said, look, I have to have a hearing on this. Judge Newman did.
And they did have a hearing. Ultimately, Judge Newman decided in favor of the state. He said that Alec's alleged and admitted financial crimes were so intimately connected to the state's argument that proof of them was essential to complete the story. So prosecutors called Jeannie Seckinger, former chief financial officer of the Murdaugh family law firm, PMPED. Alec's grandfather started PMPED more than 100 years ago. It's now defunct. Jeannie Seckinger had many years to observe Alec at his law practice. Prosecutor Waters asked her what she thought of him.
Tell me, what was your observation of Alec as a lawyer in the office? What was your observations and characterization?
Alec kept different hours than a lot of the rest of us. He came in and he would work late. Always loud, always busy, always in a rush. He had the gift of gab, but he always seemed last minute and hurried and frenetic.
Okay. Always last minute and frenetic?
Yes.
What about his cell phone use? How was he with the cell phone?
Constantly on the phone.
Constantly on the phone. So what were your observations of him as a lawyer?
I think Alec was successful more not from his work ethic, but from his ability to establish relationships and to manipulate people into settlements and clients into liking him. So he did it through the art of bullshit, basically.
That can be an art.
Mm-hmm.
She said she confronted Alec on the day of Maggie's and Paul's deaths about stealing $792,000 from the law firm. She said that Alec looked at her with a pretty dirty look, one she hadn't seen before, and said, "What do you need now?" Her concern was that Alec had stolen fees and they were paid to him personally. That intense conversation, she said, was cut short. Alec had just received word that his father was critically ill.
Jeannie Seckinger, the CFO who confronted him about the missing money, I mean, it was her job to look at the books, keep track of the money, where it was going, how much was coming in. He obviously got past her for 10 years with all of this, stealing millions of dollars. So you could tell she was very angry with him.
Then DNA took center stage. Throughout the trial, a big question revolved around biological evidence on Alec's clothing, or rather, a lack of biological evidence. Defense attorney Philip Barber asked SLED scientist Sarah Zapata, "Is it fair to say there's no human blood on the T-shirt?" He was referring to the white T-shirt Alec wore when law enforcement arrived on the night of the murder. "The test that I performed was negative for the presence of human blood," Zapata said. She went on, saying that her SLED lab tests were 0 for 74 on finding any kind of blood on Alec's clothes.
And in your test, on none of these did you detect human blood with hemotrace. Is that correct?
For all those cuttings for the different items, they were all put together into that tube for that item. And for all of those tests, the result was negative.
Alec's defense also attempted to make use of his drug addiction as a possible explanation for Maggie's and Paul's murders. As early as late summer of 2021, Alec had admitted to having a serious opioid addiction. This came in the wake of a bizarre, botched attempt for Alec to stage his own death. I discussed this briefly in the last episode. According to his attorneys and prosecutors, Alec supplied his opioid supplier, a former legal client named Curtis Edward Smith, with a gun. Then Alec asked Smith to shoot him in the head during a staged roadside robbery. It didn't work out. Smith only grazed Alec rather than kill him. Smith was eventually charged with insurance fraud because Alec had hoped to retrieve a $10 million insurance payout for his son Buster, and was charged with assisting a person in suicide, among other charges. According to Alec's defense attorneys, Smith went into massive debt while supplying Alec with thousands of dollars of drugs every week. That debt to a gang of criminal drug dealers known as the Cowboys came due, and Alec's attorneys implied during cross-examination of one of the lead investigators that the Cowboys came after Maggie and Paul because of it. When it was their turn to call witnesses, Alec's defense brought his oldest son, Buster, to the stand. Among other revelations, jurors learned that Buster didn't know his father's birthday. That was a brief moment of levity in court. But more importantly, Buster testified about Alec's demeanor after the murders.
Buster, when did you first find out that your mom and brother were murdered?
My dad called me. I can't remember the exact time, but it was later. And he called me on the phone. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I was like, yeah. And then he, sounded odd, and then he told me that my mom and brother had been shot.
Buster testified about his father's state of mind on the night of the murders. He was heartbroken, he recounted. I walked in the door and saw him, gave him a hug. He was destroyed. Buster also said that his mother and brother both confronted Alec about his drug use before their deaths. I thought that he had handled it, Buster said.
He talked about his family and his brother, his mother. They had been on some trip together very recently, probably the weekend before the homicides, and everything seemed fine.
After testifying, Buster approached his father at the defense table. He reportedly squeezed his hand before returning to his seat. Mark Ball was a longtime friend and law firm partner of Alec Murdaugh's, who was called to the stand twice during the trial, once as a defense witness and another as the state's rebuttal witness. Ball testified about what he saw at the crime scene, particularly the day following the murders. He said he went over to the Moselle kennels after the crime scene had been released. He described seeing evidence at the scene, including a piece of a buckshot lying on the windowsill. He said he went over to a SLED agent that was there and told him, but the agent said, "We have all we need." He then went back and saw something else.
Looking around around the floor and all that, there was a piece of Paul's skull about the size of a baseball laying there.
Did that upset you?
It did, very much. I mean, it just really infuriated me. And I don't know who I was supposed to be mad at, but it just infuriated me that this young man had been murdered and there was still his remains there. And there was a large blood spot and tissue out right off of the apron of that area right outside the feed room that was there. And it's kind of like walking across a grave. It's one of those things you just don't do.
Ball also testified about how he had to call a long list of Alec's clients to explain that he had stolen their money. In addition to testifying about the crime scene and about Alec's financial crimes, Ball also told the jury about Alec's words and actions in the wake of the killings. He said that Alec told him at least 3 times that he was not at the kennels on the night of the murders.
In the time after the murders, did you have a number of conversations with the defendant about his activities that night?
I did. I had that night and then subsequent days.
And did you go over to those in fairly some sort of detail?
Yes, sir.
Specifically, Prosecutor Waters wanted to know what Alec had told him about his whereabouts on the night of the murders.
You thought you were his buddy, been partners for 34 years, y'all are sitting on the couch, is that right?
Like family.
And you start talking to him, is he responding to your questions appropriately?
He was.
Answering the correct subject matter?
He was. He was very upset, obviously.
Sure, but he was answering your questions. He wasn't unable to make sentences.
He was, yeah.
And did you talk to him about what he did that night?
Yeah.
And did he deny ever going down to those kennels to his buddy and law partner of 34 years?
He said that he ate dinner, laid down on the couch, took a nap, and then left to check on him.
Recall that multiple witnesses and a video indicated earlier in trial testimony that Alec had gone to the Moselle kennels on the night of the murders. That conflicted with Alec's statements prior to trial.
And now you know that's not true from seeing the kennel video, right?
I do.
And that wasn't the only time he told you that, is it?
No, at least 3 times.
At least 3 times. And this would be over the subsequent days?
Yes, sir.
Subsequent conversations that you had with him?
Yes, sir.
And he was always clear that he never went down to those kennels after they ate dinner?
It was the same version of it, but it wasn't always just me.
Ball told the jury that Alec appeared to be a good lawyer, a loving father, devoted husband, savvy with his finances.
He was pretty good at hiding who he really was, wasn't he?
Obviously.
You known him for 34 years?
I knew him for 34 years, or I have known him for 34 years.
After the testimony from one of his closest confidants, Alec Murdaugh then took the stand. It was a surprise to many, but perhaps he felt like he had to. Alec's now somewhat obvious lie that he hadn't been at the kennels that night had been exposed by the prosecution.
So Alec Murdaugh had told law enforcement the night of the homicides, 2 days after the homicides, and then later in August of 2021, that he wasn't at the kennels. He said he was at home napping. So he then was caught in a lie.
Indeed, while on the stand, Alec admitted that he had gone to the kennels on the night of the murders with his wife and son.
Were you, in fact, at the kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Did you lie to SLED Agent Owen and Deputy Laura Rutland on the night of June 7th and told them that you stayed at the house after dinner?
I did lie to them.
Did you lie to Agent Owen and Agent Croft on the follow-up interview on June 10th that the last time you saw Maggie and Paul was at dinner?
I did lie to them.
And in the interview of August 11th, did you tell Agent Owen and Agent Croft, did you lie to them by telling them that you were not down at the kennels on that night?
Yes.
He blamed the lie on his addiction to opioids, which clouded his thinking and made him paranoid, he said.
As my addiction evolved over time, I would get in these situations or circumstances where I would get paranoid thinking. It could be anything that triggered it. It might be a look somebody gave me. It might be a reaction somebody had to something I did. It might be a policeman following me in a car. That night, June 7th, after finding Mags and Papa, don't talk to anybody without Danny with you. All my partners were just repeatedly telling me that. I had a deputy sheriff taking gunshot test from my hands. I'm sitting in a police car with David Owen asking me about my relationship with my wife and my son. And all those things coupled together after finding them, coupled with my distrust for SLED, caused me to have paranoid thoughts. Normally, when these paranoid thoughts would hit me, I could take a deep breath real quick and just think about it, reason my way through it, and just get past it really quickly. On June the 7th, I wasn't thinking clearly. I don't think I was capable of reason. And I lied about being down there. And I'm so sorry that I did.
But he insisted that he did not shoot his wife or his son. He said shortly after he was at the kennels with them, he drove over to see his mother. He spent about 20 minutes there and then drove back to Moselle. He said the lights were on in the house, but Maggie and Paul weren't there. He then drove over to the kennels, where he found their dead bodies. He insisted that he could never intentionally do anything to hurt either one of them. Not ever.
Do you love Paul?
Did I love him? Like no other. He and Buster.
Do you love Maggie?
Oh, more than anything. I love Maggie from the first time we went out.
Did you kill Maggie?
No, I did not kill Maggie. I did not kill Paul. I would never hurt Maggie, and I would never hurt Paul. Ever. Under any circumstances.
As for why he continued to lie about where he was that night, he said, "What a tangled web we weave." He went on, "Once I told a lie, then I told my family I had to keep lying." Alec was on the stand for 2 days, often referring to Maggie and Paul as Mags and Paw. On cross-examination, he said he originally didn't want to go down to the kennels, but quickly changed his mind to go after Maggie asked him to. Prosecutor Waters asked him if the dogs down there had acted strange at all prior to Alec leaving.
Let me ask you this. Were the dogs barking and carrying on or going out into the woods or acting like they sensed somebody was around that they didn't know?
Were the dogs acting like there was somebody around that they didn't know?
Yeah, like dogs do.
No.
They weren't.
There was nobody
around
that the dogs didn't know.
Okay. Dogs didn't, to your indication, sense anything out of the ordinary. They were just chasing after the guinea.
There was nobody else around.
All right. Good.
For them to sense.
Prosecutor Waters tried to drill down the timeline. Alec hadn't wanted to go to the kennels with Maggie and Paul at first, but changed his mind and left right after them on his golf cart, stayed there for a bit, and then drove the golf cart back to the main house before leaving to go to his mom's.
And if you left around 8:47 and it took about 2 minutes to get up to the house, what time would that make it, Mr. Murdaugh?
If I left at 8:47 and if it took me 2 minutes, that would make it 8:49.
8:49. And you testified you went inside and the TV's on, right?
I did go inside and the TV was on.
Okay. And you laid down. Is that right?
I did.
All right. Before you said you'd been napping for an hour or so, or napping that entire time, but now you laid down on the couch?
That's correct.
All right. And maybe dozed for a second?
Maybe.
According to your new story? How long did you doze?
If I dozed, extremely short time.
Extremely short time? Because you would agree with me that at 9:02, you're up and moving, according to the data.
I agree that according to that data, my phone's recording steps at whatever time it is, 9:02 something.
Prosecutor Waters pointed out that both Maggie's and Paul's phones locked for the final time at 8:49 p.m. Around 8:53, Maggie's phone shows some steps being taken. Then, from 9:02 to 9:06, Alec's phone shows he takes 283 steps.
What were you doing?
I was getting ready to go to my mom's house.
Getting ready to go? I thought you took a shower already. You were just laying down on the couch. What all you need to do to get ready to go to your mom's house?
I mean, there wasn't anything to get ready in that aspect, but I was getting ready to go. I was preparing to leave.
Doing what?
I don't know if I got up, went to the bathroom. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what I was doing.
That's far more steps in a shorter time period than any time prior, as you've seen from the testimony in this case. So what were you so busy doing?
That's
going to the bathroom?
No, I don't think that I
Did you get on a treadmill?
Went to the bathroom. No, I didn't get on a treadmill.
Jog in place?
No, I didn't jog in
jumping
place.
jacks?
No, sir, I did not do jumping jacks.
What were you doing, Mr. Murdaugh, for those 4 minutes?
Preparing to leave for my mom's house.
What? What does that mean? I mean, you're in the front room on that couch where you say you laid down. The Suburban's just right outside. What all are you doing?
I don't know if I got up and went to my room, went to the gun room, went back in the...
Doing what? You've been so clear in your new story about everything. What were you doing during these 4 minutes?
I disagree with your assertion about every detail. I don't recall. I know that I was getting up and I was leaving. I was going to check on my mom. But specifically what I was doing, I don't know.
Then he said he knows what he wasn't doing.
I know what I wasn't doing, Mr. Waters, and what I wasn't doing is doing anything, as I believe you've implied, that I was cleaning off or washing off guns, putting guns in a raincoat, and I can promise you that I wasn't doing any of that.
Okay.
Prosecutor Waters spent more than 3 hours delivering closing arguments for the state. He said Alec had motive, means, opportunity, and guilt of conscience. Alec's motive, Waters said, was an impending, all-encompassing storm. He was facing the death of his father, an opioid addiction, and a massive potential legal settlement stemming from Paul's boating accident. Those were in addition to millions of dollars in financial fraud that he had just been confronted about.
He had an opiate addiction. The entire illusion of his life was about to be altered. He couldn't live for that. He's the kind of person for which shame is an extraordinary provocation. Shame is an extraordinary provocation. His ego couldn't stand that, and he became a family annihilator.
Alec's attorney, Jim Griffin, gave the closing arguments for the defense. He criticized the investigation into Paul and Maggie's deaths. He said that if SLED had done more, they wouldn't have even arrested Alec. He also emphasized Alec's drug-induced paranoia, saying that was the reason he lied about being at Moselle minutes before the murders. He's an addict, Griffin said. That's what addicts do. Addicts lie.
Alec Murdaugh is innocent of these charges. And it requires a verdict of not guilty. On behalf of Alex, on behalf of Buster, on behalf of Maggie, and on behalf of my friend Paul, I respectfully request that you do not compound a family tragedy with another. Thank you.
And with the end of closing arguments, the decision would now come to the jury. Ann Jeanette was there on March 2nd, the first day of the jury's deliberations. She knew something was up when the jury asked for information very shortly after being asked to consider the case.
We're 3 hours into deliberations, or just shy of 3 hours, I should say. And you see kind of some activity. I know I saw some activity going on, and I thought, something's up. I think something's up. Does the jury have a question? Is something going on? So I kind of poked around. I was asking people who would possibly be in the know, is something going on? Nobody would say anything specific, but they'd say, oh, I think there's some movement up in the courtroom or something like that. So we knew something was up. And then it became quite clear it was more than likely a verdict.
Indeed, it was. The jury had taken about less than 3 hours to decide on their verdict.
2 hours and 50 minutes, to be exact. So apparently, I went upstairs to figure out what was going on in the courthouse. And I asked somebody, what's going on? And I was told that they went and knocked on the door for the jurors. And they asked, do you want us to order dinner? And they said, no, give us 10 or 20 minutes. We'll be done. So that right there told you something was going to happen. They didn't want to order dinner.
The jury found Alec Murdaugh guilty of murdering his wife and son.
Wow, what a great day for the people of South Carolina.
Prosecutors gathered in front of the courthouse to give a press conference after the verdict was read.
And we had no doubt that if we had a chance to present our case in a court of law, that they would see through the one last con that Alec Murdaugh was trying to pull. And they did, and we're so grateful for that.
At his sentencing hearing the next day, Judge Clifton Newman gave Alec a chance to speak to the court.
It's really surprising that you're waiving this right at this time. And if you opt to do so, it's on you. You're not compelled to say anything. But you have the opportunity to do so.
And I tell you again, I respect this court, but I'm innocent. I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my son, Paul.
Well, and it might not have been you. It might have been the monster you become when you take 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 opioid pills. Maybe you become another person. I've seen that before. The person standing before me was not the person who committed the crime, though it's the same individual. We'll leave that at that.
He sentenced Alec to 2 life sentences in prison. Ann Jeanette spoke with James, a juror who shared details from the trial. She said that there was one aspect of the case that really swung him, the evidence related to Alec's firearms.
He just mentioned that they looked at the evidence collectively. What he mentioned was the fact that the 300 Blackout rifle shells appeared to be cycled through the same weapon that killed Maggie and Paul, that those shell casings appeared to be cycled through the same rifle as ones that were dug up by the house that were older shell casings. The murder weapons in this case were not recovered, as we know. So that was one thing that stood out to him. Alec Murdaugh's words, of course, his demeanor on the stand.
If you followed any of the documentaries or other long-form podcasts like Mandy Matney's Murdaugh Murders, then you know that this is not the end of the Alec Murdaugh story, not by a long shot. First, Alec's lawyers have announced that they are going to appeal his conviction. On Twitter, Dick Harpootlian said, "This is the next step in the legal process to fight for Alec's constitutional right to a fair trial." He went on, "No amount of vitriol or misguided attacks will stop us from pursuing due process for Alec to the fullest extent of the law." But this case isn't the only one tied to Alec. He currently faces more than 100 criminal charges related to his financial crimes. And he's been named in at least 3 civil lawsuits, and there will likely be more. Also, as of this recording, authorities in South Carolina have recently announced that Stephen Smith's death is now being investigated as a homicide. If you remember from the beginning of last week's episode, Stephen Smith was a nursing student who was found dead at the side of the road. Initially, investigators had ruled it a hit and run, and rumors had swirled about possible involvement by the Murdaugh family. I can't recommend enough the podcast Murdaugh Murders by Mandy Matney. It's a great resource to keeping up with this case. She's fantastic and has been on it since the very beginning. And that's all for this episode. As always, I'd love to know what you think about this case. Let me know by joining the conversation on Instagram @CourtJunkie, on Twitter @CourtJunkiePod, or by emailing me at podcast@CourtJunkie.com. This episode was researched by Nicole Gusmerotti and Matt Stroud and written by Matt Stroud, who interviewed Anjanette Levy for the show. A special thank you to Law and Crime and Anjanette Levy for helping us out with this case. If you'd like to support this show, please consider subscribing to our Patreon. You can go to courtjunkie.com/support. There you'll find Patreon-exclusive episodes and receive updates available only to subscribers, including a weekly newsletter with all the most fascinating stories in both civil and criminal court. If you haven't yet subscribed to our new sister podcast, Civil, covering cases and trials outside the criminal justice system, please check that out and subscribe. Search for Civil and Court Junkie wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.